How are you? Welcome to the critical moves of Telesur. How has the United States materialized their asphyxiation? What are the initiatives for these countries to try to shield themselves from these attacks? Today, we're going to be analyzing one of these. For the Pan-European Payment Initiative, and it's known as Pepsi for the acronym in English. Let's analyze it. Let's listen statements of the European Central Bank for this initiative that's trying to be implied by the European Union. I think we have something that is worth pushing for. I think it's a Pepsi. All of these acronyms, which I should not use because I don't know what they mean, but I just know that they're a system of compensation, and sometimes in just one operation. For me, it's vital that the central bank be independent and all of their gestures be respected. But I think it's necessary to combine regulations for the monetary operations, and also should be fiscal, because this is a measurement that we can use, and structural reforms. Thus, we need many dancers so we can go and do this ball. And we need a lot of jobs and growth. I think there's no problem that those who have to make the policies agree on everything that must be done. We will put our effort to attain this objective. Christine Lagarde herself said on her Twitter account the following:
I spoke with the leaders about the needs to deepen our economic and monetary union. A lot has been achieved in the past 20 years, but more work needs to be done. Traducido al español.
And now we're translating to Spanish, and it says at the morning, the same text.
Se ha logrado mucho en los últimos 20 años, pero aún queda mucho trabajo por hacer. Lo dijo el pasado 13 de diciembre.
This was said on December 13th. Let's locate the region where we are focusing our attention. European Central Bank, a mechanism for financial integration. This is the entity that integrates all of the countries of the European Union. It was founded in 1998, and the headquarters are in Frankfurt, Germany. The location was signed in the Amsterdam Agreement, along with other important agencies. Their main function is to maintain the stability in the prices in the euro, so it will strengthen the euro. So it's the main focal point for supervision and maintenance. And this will maintain the stability of prices and euro. The main, all of the council is of the Council of Government, Executive Committee, and the governors of all of the central banks of each country. This council meets twice a month in the headquarters in Germany, and every 6 weeks there's an evaluation of the economic evolution. What are we talking about? What is the initiative Pepsi? Let's see this in depth. Ever since the tensions between the European Union and the United States, the regional bloc has tried to create an initiative where they are no longer dependent of Visa and MasterCard. What they're trying to do is have more economic sovereignty. Through the Pepsi initiative, all of these, the most important economic entities have studied need some type of payment to be of their own. This new system is trying to have payments that are no longer cash. Another one is to have a mechanism that has instant payment. This can be through a credit card or a debit card. A transfer. Pepsi is trying to bet on having 60% of the electronic payments in Europe. Up until now, the system has been presented by the European countries, and the cost will be very, very elevated. It's foreseen that by December of this year, the governments will make the decision of going forward with it or not. Europe is trying to maintain their economic sovereignty, just like Russia did it in 2014, when the United States was able to interrupt their work through closing Visa and MasterCard. Therefore, they tried to develop their own system of payments. Having made this introduction, I invite you to see some websites on other words that are important to see. For example, in the Truth Mission brings this. The technology of 5.6 of Huawei is putting Trump to the ropes. This was written on August 28th of last year. The United States has tried to do several wars to maintain their hegemony, but they lose in China one of the largest battles, which is telecommunication on the global level. The 5G will allow everybody to navigate much, much faster. And this will expand through all of the commercial and logistics and transportation. And this will make work much easier for many people. The United States came to this war with no elements to compete with the Asian country. And in the telephone front, they have had no effect. Not the effect that they expected. On one hand, you have the 5G technology. Let's see what Quintelegraph says. The BRICS members are discussing the creation of a new crypto payment. On November 14th, Kir Dmitriev, who was the director of the Russian investment fund, have agreed on working on a consolidated payment system. This would stimulate the payments in national currency and ensure the investments, which is 20% of all of the investment. He also points out that the development of this unified payment system will be an important factor to bring together the BRICS countries. The German banks, on their behalf, said that they should be a digital euro, so that there can be established a pan-European payment system with every type of digital payment. All of the people should be identified just as strict as those that the banks are using. What they're trying to do is to avoid money laundering and avoid terrorism. These informations can be complemented by Iranzi, that is in China, our correspondent. Hi, always so nice to say hi to you. United States is carrying out some financial sieges, and therefore countries from Europe, China, and Russia are trying to lose the dependency on the American financial system. In the case of China, that is carrying out a financial revolution that are pushed forward with the digital commerce. In China, at the center of this revolution is the development of the 5G technology, which can multiply by 5 all of the transactions that can be done from a cell phone. This would be a way to ensure the online transparencies. There is also important to mention a satellite that has been sent to the space by China and just recently had a communication with Earth. The quantic computer chip will ensure the international transactions, and in this case, China has also the lead on this. We should also say that China is at the head of the payments and transactions online, even ahead United States, and that all of the applications relevant to the transactions have an acceptance of 95% within the Chinese people. The Chinese government has implemented a plan to strengthen all of these transactions by 2022. None of these initiatives by themselves solves the international problem ever since the World War II, which is the dependency on the dollar currency and the entities that are dominated by the United States. In the case of China, they have pushed forward Union Pay, which is to compete with Visa and MasterCard. However, it has not had the coverage in the eastern countries as they desired. Therefore, the European initiatives like Pepsi are very important. We must also say that, bearing in mind the commercial war began by the United States and the sanctions that have been imposed on Beijing, they have limited the use of the dollar in the transaction and their international transactions. They have also signed several bilateral agreements with countries such as Russia to carry out their commercial agreements in their own currency and therefore limit the use of the dollar in their businesses. This is what we have, and we will keep you updated. Thank you very much, Iranzi, for your report. This was Iranzi Perlaza from Beijing. Let's go to our first pause, but before, as always, through our Twitter website, you could participate in. The European Union is trying to shield itself from the dollar through the implementation of a financial platform known as Pepsi. What will be the future of the dollar? Give us your impression. Participate with us. We'll be Why has the U.S. currency been the dominating currency in the global world? What are the alternatives that the countries have been obligated to adopt to shield their sovereignty? United States has a dominion on the world system of payment. They have had a framework that comes from World War II, and they have created technological development to go forward with it. One example is the SWIFT payment, created in 1973 as an international network between several banks and used for payments. Therefore, the United States many countries have dependency on the United States. This is why European and Asian governments are creating a parallel system that allows them to do the same thing. Therefore, they win in their economic sovereignty. In the past years, China and Russia have done this. Europe avoids to be affected by the commercial war between China and the U.S., as well as taking advantage of the 5G technology. But at the same time, they try to find economic sovereignty. And there is where the Pepsi initiative has come about. With this, the U.S. hegemony will lose all of its ground, and there's going to be new technology and ways of payment. Therefore, the United States dollar will become weakened. and there will be more diversity of financial systems. Having said all this, let's begin with the analysis and critical moves from Mexico. We have Dr. Bejar, who's an expert in sociology. He's a scholar in the economy University of UNAM. And then we have Victor Escudero Rubio. He's an expert in cybersecurity and all of these crypto ways of currency. Let's begin with Alejandro. Doctor, on one hand, we see that the hegemony of the dollar is becoming unstable because every time there are new initiatives, not only of dependent countries, but of regional blocs such as the BRICS, European Union, that are trying to shield themselves and to do away from all of the domination that's been traditionally in the hands of the US dollar. Well, in fact, first of all, I want to thank you for the invitation to talk with you and your audience. I think that the United States is in a battle, a financial and monetary battle on a worldwide scale, and that the technological aspect is playing a decisive role. United States has been left behind in the construction of technology and infrastructure of the 5G, in which China has the lead. In the case of Europe, they're even far behind, but it's an economic association that is incredibly strong. So in this dispute, it is important to say that the United States maintains the privilege of being the reserve money, and that consolidates a position on a worldwide that is privileged because it's the only country that can acquire debt in their own currency. But far beyond this, it establishes, ever since the beginning of the 70s, this interbank mechanism that is called SWIFT, by which everyone is obligated to use the financial mechanisms that are in the U.S. And this gives them a position that is extremely privileged, because if they decide to apply sanctions on any country, everybody is subject to this regulation, because they have to go through the SWIFT system to do business or operations with A or B or C country. We are now seeing a display of the use of force, but you cannot do that all the time and not everywhere. So the value that the financial control has is fundamental. So the dollar is losing bit by bit its weight, because the U.S. economy is losing their strength vis-a-vis the other countries. And this is how the BRICS are rising. And on the other hand, this dispute on the international commercial field with the European community, on which the Brexit is a fundamental part, because the economic power in Europe has been the UK. And the UK gave space to dollar in the beginning of the 20th century and right after the Second World War. So in this context, it is important to locate that the U.S. position that is privileged is is still ongoing because it has a disproportionate weight in the World Bank, in the International Monetary Fund, and at the same time they have all of this financial system tools that are uneven for the rest. And of course, it's a way of blackmail with other countries when there are competitors like the BRICS. So in this era of technological change, what we are going to see increasingly are a display of new alternatives. This does not necessarily mean that the United States will be displaced from the lead. I am going to mention a central topic that is that there is this Libra project that is developed by Facebook and by a group of 16 companies that have worldwide reach, where there is Visa and MasterCard, and what they're trying to do is to have a digital currency that would allow that could have a 2.6 billion reach of people. Well, what the European Union is trying to do is to get away from the dependency of MasterCard and Visa. You have already spoken of the technology, and this is where I want to start with my other guest, Victor Escudero, who's a specialist in cybersecurity and bitcoins and other crypto coins. Can you speak about what are the strengths of Pepsi to try to do away with the SWIFT platform and all of the power of the dollar currency on a worldwide scale?
Muy bien.
Very well.
Muchas gracias por esta invitación. Continuando con lo que ha comentado el compañero,
there are initiatives like the one in Facebook. I don't think it's going to be successful, but what they're trying to do is to find alternative systems that don't go through the SWIFT system, Visa, American Express, MasterCard. And of course, we have the same system. It's that American companies are dominating this aspect. What they're trying to do is try to avoid that China can take away part of their natural clients. And of course, this will be done beyond the dollar. However, the dollar would be used as the reference. So the international panorama would not change that much. But with the Pepsi initiative, what they're trying to do is to have a certain independence from all of the payments that won't pass through Visa or MasterCard. So nowadays, if somebody has a credit card, if they have they have to connect to their bank to see if there is enough money. Everything that happens is that, in fact, to pay up a card, everything is done through Visa or MasterCard. So the thing is that these companies know what you're spending on, how much you're spending. They have all of the information.
Y que esas tarjetas sean solamente de uso con mis cuentas en mi banco, nada más. Y solamente en caso de que tuviera que realizar una transacción hacia un banco de un tercero, pues es posible que necesitaré una pasarela de pago, estilo lo que a día de hoy pues nos dan Visa, Mastercard, etc.
And this gives them total control over all of information. And this system has all the control, and that not even the banks themselves have. And all of the countries are dependent on it. The Europeans, the Asians. And this Libra project, these are once again American companies that are seeking to find a way to have the payments done through their system. Nowadays, this gives the United States a lot of power. And everybody else is paying for this control. But when the other countries see that this is not fair for them, then they start to doubt. For example, when the money to WikiLeaks was cut, everything was clear where the money came from. But when there was a crisis with Crimea, something similar happened. And what was happening is that Russia could not receive payments from other countries. And this is not fair because one country has the monopoly over a system. With this U.S. monopoly, how can this initiative, this Pepsi initiative, be something credible? Well, this is not the first attempt. In 2012, there was another one that failed. It's very hard that it be successful because of all of the pressure that comes.
Están apoyados indirectamente por el Banco Central Europeo, y están evaluándolo. Básicamente están en modo de evaluación, viendo si esta alternativa será viable.
And what they're doing is trying to see if this initiative will be valid. And at least European banks will try to do their best effort. Thank you very much, Victor, for your explanations. I also thank Alejandro Álvarez Pedro for your time and your explanation, your dissertation, always so well received in our programs. See you soon. Let's establish a new pause, and we have our question on Twitter with which you can interact with us. You can participate with your criteria. Let's reiterate. It is the European Union is trying to shield from the US dollar through the implementation of a financial platform known as Pepsi. What will be the future of the dollar? Pose your opinions. Thank you very much for integrating our program. After the pause, we continue with a dialogue with a very important guest.
Follow the most important global events through a comprehensive perspective. with a team of journalists in 25 locations around the world to convey our people's reality. From the South, weekdays, only on Telesur. Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Earth. Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur.
How has U.S. materialized their domination over other countries? What has been the answer of many of these countries? Historically, the United States has based their hegemony control over the financial systems by obtaining the information of countries, companies, and people. At the same time, they have blocked bank operation that are not aligned with their interests. This has been clear with Venezuela and Cuba, where their blockade has been done through the banks, and they cannot do any transaction because Washington doesn't want to. Other countries like Russia, Iran, and China have been attacked by the U.S. in similar ways. Due to all of this, New Delhi, Beijing, and Russia have allied to find a new system without having anything to do with the United States. This fact has already happened with Tehran. This platform, as well as the European Pepsi, has the intention of functioning through the 5G technology because their speed is much faster, and it cannot be penetrated by espionage. Of course, the United States wants to isolate some other countries. What they do is they try to block these countries through the financial system. This is a strong architecture that is not perfect. This is what we're going to be talking with Carlos Ramírez. He's a professor, a scholar. Thank you very much, Professor. Happy New Year to everybody. This is your first apparition in the 2020 in Telesur? Okay, well, I hope it's not the last one. So, as you can see, we're speaking of the U.S. hegemony in the currency, and the European Union is trying to counterfight with the Pepsi initiative. I would like to speak about how the United States is doing. I would not say United States. I would say the Zionism, the imperialism that is who really controls the financial system.
Puertas afuera, aunque también sabemos que puertas adentro lo mueve, y en los próximos meses lo vamos a ir comprobando porque estamos en año electoral.
Eso es correcto. Fíjese.
Look,
el teórico del Estado socialista,
the social state, Lenin said that the imperialism, under the control of the monopoly and concentration of wealth, and of those great products that they were called back then, imposed the conditions of the transaction. And this was possible to do so worldwide through a bank. So now, what changes is the technology, because the monopolies are still the same. The concentration of the finance and the infrastructure is also the same, because it's still through banks. This is the architecture of the worldwide power.
para tener claro que es el
So this is the
imperialismo
first
y
part
no
that
los
we should
Estados Unidos.
consider.
Es el
It's not
imperialismo, los
the United
imperialistas y
States
los
itself. It's the
Un
imperialism.
elemento vital para estos
A
tiempos
vital element for
Yo no
this
creo
is that I don't
que la Unión
believe
Europea
that the European
vaya
Union
a
will
permitirse
allow
con su
themselves
aliado principal, que es
to
el
have
imperialismo de los Estados Unidos,
problems with their
de
main
desde
ally.
un primer momento dejarlo a un lado.
They're not going
Pero
to leave
estamos
them
hablando de una
aside.
Unión Europea que tiene
Well, we're
características
speaking of a
especiales
European
en
Union
esta-
that
en
has
estos
special
momentos del siglo
characteristics right
XXI.
now.
Estamos hablando de una
We're
Unión
speaking
Europea
of a European
que está
Union
permitiéndole
that
que
is
le abrió
allowing,
las puertas, porque
that
así
that opened the door,
más que se lo pidió, se lo exigió otro imperialista
And
histórico del mundo que se llama Reino Unido,
they opened the
de la
door
Gran Bretaña e Irlanda del Norte.
Eso
the
no
UK.
está, a mi modo de ver, bien
Well,
precisado.
this is not
El
well
hecho de que el Reino
focused.
Unido
I
no
think that
forme
the fact
parte
that the UK
por el problema que tienen con el Brexit,
is no
ahí
longer
se dice
part.
que no hay un elemento común.
Well, there's a
Todavía
common
existen
element.
Pero es que el elemento no es la Unión
However,
Europea, el elemento son las
The
relaciones
element is not the
internacionales.
European Union, but
Y
the
entonces, en las
international
relaciones
relationships.
internacionales está
So
jugando China,
here is
con
where
un nivel
China
altísimo
comes in
tecnológicamente,
that has a very
políticamente,
high
militarmente,
politically,
financieramente,
military,
y en
and
el terreno
technological high
nuclear. Está
level.
jugando Rusia.
Russia is also a factor. This is why the role of the European Union in terms of what the Pepsi means should be little by little and not leaving aside the imperialism, but reaching agreements because they're not going to leave aside Russia. Because Russia is a historical enemy of Great Britain. So I think it's going to be a process in terms of what the interest, the shared interest of the European imperialism and the U.S. imperialism and the Zionist imperialism. From my point of view, I think this is the circumstance. And moreover, if we analyze that the technological platform that has the widest reach is controlled by China. This is the 5G. So there is no component that from another country that is developing the 5G technology. Several analysts agree that this Pepsi agreement tries to have the success it wants to have. It should be done on the 5G platform. What you've just said is very important. I think that we're going to do better if we respect international law, because if there are common interests between Europe and China, of course, this lies on the public international law. And the conditions of the imperialism is based on force, while China and Russia, India are proposing the respect of international law. So in this context, the European Union should also be, should balance. But there's another element that we must highlight, which is only India, China, these two great forces of Asia, they are almost half of the inhabitants in the world. So this is an essential element that we must bear in mind, because we also must analyze that China will never withdraw their investments from the U.S. because this would unchain a lot of problems.
En todo caso, recordemos que esta guerra comercial ha sido impulsada por Estados Unidos.
Claro, yo solo que lo estoy destacando dándole respuesta a la campaña que tienen los imperialistas y los sionistas. Lo que sí intento decir y tener claro con relación a este tema, el tema de que nos estamos abocando, es que creo que por
I
esta
think
medida,
that due to these measures,
vamos a caminar de una forma más decente
if,
por el derecho internacional público. Que a eso
if there becomes reality, this parallel system, the international law will be respected a bit more, because we're going to be in the same conditions. and will not be as now, because the United States is using this to impose sanctions, to spy, and to go against the sovereignty of these other countries. You were speaking of two countries that are part of a very important bloc, that is the BRICS, that has also sat at the table to reflect on how to become financially independent from the hegemony of the dollar. This is because BRICS are the emerging economies. These are represented by Russia, China, South Africa. These are the economies that are outcoming from this was the product of the Cold War. So these scenarios, these economies have grown, not only in terms of economy, but also technologically, and also in human rights, although the United States government doesn't say so. They have also been, they have increased. For example, this Silk Route is an international plan from China for the world. So in this context, the BRICS is also becoming stronger and is consolidating the political spaces and economic and technological spaces in the world. And I think this is where we should go, although as of now, we hear the drums of war, although we hope that this doesn't go forward. Well, and Iran is also part of this economic independence. And nowadays, Iran is always on the headlines saying that the U.S. is responsible for all of the uproar in this part of the Middle East. And this fact, we're speaking about it because it has had some repercussion in the financial world. Yes, this is correct. But well, this double morale of the imperialism, what they do is they speak about sovereignty, liberty, but it's them who are pushing forward the war. So now it's important to see that they want to show that Iran is the culprit for everything that's going on. And what Iran is doing is just using their international law, which is the right to defend themselves. But above all, this international law that says that if I'm attacked, if a general of my military force is assassinated by an external force in an occupied territory, I have the right to defend myself. So in this context, it's undoubtedly that we should visualize what the double morale is about. So the government of the United States, the Zionist and the imperialism of the United States don't have any morale to speak to the world about democracy, because they themselves are the ones who caused this war. And there was a lack of human rights in the sanctions against Venezuela and Cuba. And what they're doing is they have the blockade that is imposed on the SWIFT system. This is why the governments of Cuba and Venezuela must seriously think of what the migration means. Migration to other rules of the games, trying to do their transactions with other systems. It's important to structure this in the rationale of the people. This is because the imperialism will never be left alone. They're acting not to do so. There's something else important, that is the human rights. Not only the human rights against the people of Venezuela and Cuba, but everything that is Central America. All of these financial processes in the United States, there is still a situation that the world is just this element of domination
de querer pretender que nosotros seamos subordinados
that we are dominated to the empire is part of this double morale. So it's key that Venezuela, Cuba, and Latin America and the Caribbean strengthen their mechanism of integration. This is why the President of Mexico and Argentina will have a work meeting with CELAC, and what they're trying to do is to create a bloc that is strong and together that will defend ourselves from any other threat. It's important that everybody knows that we do have sovereignty and that we have lots to propose. We have a great culture and that we have a huge mentality toward living together in a peaceful way. And above all, we want to have a political and cultural sovereignty that is supported by the currency, by our economic system. Let's not forget what our father Simón Bolívar wanted to propose. He wanted to have internal laws and that can structure better and strengthen each country. And that through this we can strengthen education, health, and above all, the respect for each other. Thank you very much, Professor Ricardo, for this vision. And we would like to analyze this further on. Thank you very much for coming to us, and we are now going to conclusions. Although everything is just initiative, the Pepsi initiative has two lines that are very clear. First, there is an increased interest in doing away with the dependency on the dollar currency. And the domination of the Washington is not going to be perfect, nor it's not going to last in time. This is all for today.